This is Sandside, Scarborough's oldest and most historic harbour street. It holds over 800 years of history, from medieval walls and inns, through centuries of fishing, sail-making and trade, to chapels, cottages and warehouses built hard against the wind and tide. Here every doorway, stone and alley tells stories of fishermen and herring girls, sailors, shopkeepers and storms, shellfire, labour and worship. Walk with me along Sandside, where history meets the shoreline. Looking out across the harbour towards the lighthouse, it's hard to imagine that once lay a maze of tiny lanes, yards and fishermen's cottages. One of them was Spread Eagle Lane, a narrow cobbled lane climbing up from the harbour front, long since swept away by the clearance of the 1920s and 1930s. This is what it used to look like, with the golden ball gables showing in the top left-hand corner. Spread Eagle Lane took its name from the old Spread Eagle Inn, the white building you see here. It was a favourite haunt of fishermen, sailors and harbour workers. The inn stood just off the main Sandside, and behind it the street wound uphill between cramped buildings, opening into a world now completely vanished. In the 19th century, this little lane was home to families whose lives were tied to the sea. Men like Thomas and William Boys, fishermen who worked the boats that once lined the harbour. The Pashby family, with generations of fishermen and jet polishers living in the tiny cottages. And the bilbies, fish hawkers and harbour workers who made their living from whatever the tide brought in. The lane stood somewhere just near here. The innkeepers were part of the story too. John Sanderson, who kept the Spread Eagle Inn in the mid-1800s, offering cheap lodgings to visiting sailors. Later came James and Elizabeth Whitty, running the place through the 1870s and 1880s. These people lived in conditions that today would seem very cramped: tiny rooms, steep stairways, shared yards and the constant smell of tar, fish and salt. By the early 20th century, the old yards were beginning to disappear. Slum clearance, harbour improvements and redevelopment swept away Spread Eagle Lane entirely.
Sea's been kind to us lately.
And I started swimming like mad away from ship because I knew she would carry a deck.
If you stand on Sandside today, it's easy to imagine that the road has always sat just where it does, but the truth is far stranger and far older. Beneath your feet lies a forgotten shoreline, and beneath that shoreline lie the sunken ruins of Scarborough's past. For centuries, Sandside wasn't a promenade at all. It was the edge of the beach, a ragged lane of fishermen's houses and inns built so close to the water that the tide would slap at the doors. Marine Drive was built, and to meet it, the council raised the level of Sandside. They packed earth, stone and harbour rubble beneath the road, lifting it higher and higher until the old ground floors of the inns and houses were left stranded below street level. Walk along Sandside and you'll clearly see stellar windows peering out from beneath the pavement. These were once ordinary ground floor openings, looking straight onto the beach. Now they sit half buried, the modern road pressing down above them. These 18th century houses, whose original floors lay lower than the street, they feel slightly off, slightly sunken, because they are. The town rose around them and they stayed put. Princess Café on Sandside first served as a police station from 1847 to 1912. At pavement level it held offices and watchrooms, while down the side these steps led below into the basement cells cut deep into the building. And here I bring it to life, busy as it was in about 1910. People passed by the cells, which closed in 1912, Life here was constantly busy. Fishermen, harbour workers and townsfolk moving past, trade and patrol work going on all around. I walked down these old stone steps, worn smooth by hundreds of years of feet, officers, prisoners and visitors all passing down here. They leaned into what was once the police station cells, now lying beneath the Princess Café. Beneath your feet lies the original Georgian pattern tile floor when it was built as a merchant's house and warehouse in 1820. It survives intact in some places, while in others the tiles have been lifted, but you can still see clearly and trace the design and see exactly where they once lie. You might think this is strange. You'd expect plain stone or brick in a police station, but the building was built as a merchant's house, and when it became the station in 1847, they seemed to be kept what was already there. It was too good to change and easy to keep clean. It's a wonderful reminder of what stood here long before the police arrived. It remained in the council's ownership until it was sold in 1924 for £1,200 to Herbert Gilman, who changed it into a cafe, and this is the agreement of sale signed on the 6th of November 1924. And going into the Tunny Club Fish and Chips next door.
So these are the two cottages, right? So I know for definite under here, alright, there was a basement that they filled in 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
So, like, ideally for me,
Yeah.
this would be cleared out. But this was your dividing wall. There was another door there. That went across, so this would be one cottage. That was another cottage, then up and up. And then you see shape at staircase in there. So part of what, like, eventually what I'd like to do is link it all with everything in. That's the fireplace. Yeah? Okay, then you come down here. And then you're into here. So what was this used for? So this is like a back ginnel.
Right.
Now did they share that? Or did they, you know, like when you don't know? I'd love to know, but look.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, this was when I took it over, just full of shit. So we've done our best to clean, but there's an old window here.
They're the old windows. By the look of it.
Well, yeah.
And just across the road is the familiar blue police telephone box. From early to mid-20th century, it formed a vital link in the police patrol network. One of only 3 left in the country, officers walking the harbour and streets could step inside to call headquarters, send reports or receive instructions. Simple but practical, with a telephone, shelf and small workplace. It's now protected and is a Grade 2 listed structure. This was once the beating heart of Scarborough Shipbuilding. It's called Porriot's Lane. The Porriot family were master shipwrights who built and repaired hundreds of vessels right here. Every inch was alive with work. Timber yards, saw pits, sail lofts and stalls all packed tight. Now this is Porriot's Lane today. It was a short cut to the shore, a place of craft and trade, and some say a handy way to move things quietly after dark. Smugglers were rife in those early days. Today it stands as a quiet reminder. The ships that sailed from the harbour were born right here in this little lane. Next to it is Parkin's Lane, a well-known sailmaker who lived and worked here, exactly the kind of vital harbour trade that kept the whole port running. It's one of the oldest lanes along the shore, marked on maps as far back as the 1700s, part of that tight network of lanes that linked Sandside to the harbour. In the 1800s it had 9 houses plus a warehouse packed along its length. The 1871 census shows 40 people living in just 8 homes along here. When they raised Sandside, the lane's lower end was cut off and covered over. Many of the old cottages were cleared away. Now it looks quiet and plain, just a blank wall, but it's still the same ancient route. Sandside also had a ghost train. Visitors climbed aboard small cars that rattled through darkness past glowing skeletons and sudden bursts of light. The ghost train stood among cafes, arcades and shops, and the building is now tailor-made fun. At the beginning of the 1900s, it was a sail loft and harbour warehouse. High ceilings and heavy timber frames were built to hold canvas, cordage and cargo, with room overhead to make, mend and dry sails. Things changed and it became an amusement hall, then later becoming tailor-made fun. Look at the rear and you can see its true purpose. Upper level doors, strong brackets and hoist points. They were built so goods could be hoisted safely above the high tide. Nets, ropes and barrels travelled up and down here, proof that Sandside was first and foremost a working harbour area. This is Ivy by the Sea, known for nearly 200 years as just Ivy House. It was built about 1820, and from the beginnings it belonged to the waterfront life. Lived in and ran by harbour-connected families such as the Wilsons and Harlands. Shipmasters, chandeliers and lodging housekeepers welcoming sailors and early visitors. Because the building was two houses joined together, people say the cellars don't line up right. There are odd steps down, blocked arches and corners that seem to stretch further back than the building above. Staff say it's always colder down there than it should be, even in summer, and some swear that there's a sealed passage leading towards the harbour. The Herring Girl house was built around 1790 to 1810. Solid fisherfolk cottages and net stores. Notice the low doorways. Back then people were shorter, but there was a more reason too. Low openings kept out the wind, the spray and storm-driven waves and helped hold warmth inside. Over 2 centuries, sand and repairs have slowly raised the ground outside, so today they look even lower still. These were working homes and workshops where families lived, nets were mended, and the herring girls worked long hours gutting and packing the cats landed yards away. High on the herring girl's house hangs the old working bell. It rang loud and clear whenever boats arrived with their catch, calling the herring girls and workers together to gut, pack and salt the fish straight away. It marked their long, busy days, and its sound speaks right through Sandside and into the back lanes too. It was placed high up, so the sound carried well over the roofs and harbour houses. This is the Harbour Bar, and it's famous the world over. But long before the ice cream, this was a place of ropes and barrels, herrings and tar. When they hired the road, its ground floor slipped away beneath the pavement, leaving deep, cool cellars that once held fish and smuggled goods, and now hold tubs of ice cream of every flavour you can dream of. In 1945, it began its new life and was opened by the Elzona family, already well known for ice cream since the 1890s. From day one it was packed. They sold out in just 2 hours. Step inside and you step straight back to mirrors, chrome, hand-painted signs and the classic 1950s milk bar look preserved almost unchanged. Generations have come here for Knickerbocker glories and harbour views, and it's still run by the same family today. Standing on Sandside since at least 1735, the Golden Ball is one of Scarborough's oldest and most famous harbour inns. For nearly 300 years it has been the heart of this waterfront, a meeting place for fishermen, sailors, merchants and travellers arriving from all over the coast. Its fixed stone walls and low beams have seen everything: storms, shipwrecks, and of course plenty of tales of smuggling. Most remarkably, ships and their cargo were actually auctioned right here on the pavement outside, a huge event in the town's life. It stood right beside Parkins Lane, one of the hidden routes used to move goods unseen, so it was often where secrets were shared and plans made. The name itself comes from the old shipping sign. A golden ball was once a mark of safe trade and good fortune, and still standing strong today, it remains one of the very last original harbour pubs, a wonderful link to the busy and lively days of old Sandside. This is the Lancaster. Parts go back to 1500. It was once the Dog and Duck and Shipwrights Arms, named for the ships that traded up the coast. In the 1890s, the two were joined, creating the building you see today, packed with ancient timbers. It stood here for over 500 years, serving every generation that worked and lived around the harbour. It was later renamed the Lancaster after the trading ships that sailed to Lancaster. And here we have the Newcastle packet. Its story begins around 1230, when it stood right on the old shoreline, acting as the customs office where every toll and harbour due was paid. Later it became a post house, and from the 1830s an inn, named after the packet ships that carried coal from Newcastle. Though rebuilt in the 1890s, it carefully kept its ancient timber frame and rare carvings that you can still see today. At the rear of Sandside are the vaults, deep stone channels cut into the harbour wall back in the 1700s. They carried waste away, and twice a day the tide would rush right in, flushing them clean. They also helped moor boats and handle cargo. Simple, clever, and still doing their work after 300 years. Beneath the reach of the castle there once ran a narrow lane called Cook's Row. It wasn't grand, just a small lane in Scarborough's early life. Imagine the smell of fresh bread drifting along the lane, people chatting across worn doorsteps, children weaving between crooked cottages, and the lane carried the soft hum of a town still finding its shape. As the Victorians reshaped the streets, Cook's Row slipped quietly from the map. Today, only the curve of the land hints at where it once ran. Most of Cook's Row was demolished in the 1940s and replaced with more modern buildings.
Wonderful. The children enjoyed the hints.
How's the little one doing today?
ship is delayed, same as last week.